So this is a web demonstration of how to make and mock up a website, and I will be using FireWorks for this, and I will show you another program that's very popular that does the exact same thing called Balsamiq. So what we have here is the website that I will be mocking up, and basically it uses a 3D render for the background of something that I made inside of Cinema 4D, and it's supposed to be a fictional company called The Modern House. And it's sheer comfort, expensively supplied, and it's got a couple of images, one of which has a little rounding in the CSS, so you can now round corners in CSS without having to do it in Photoshop. And then it says your house sucks, and it has my real website on there, which when you click it, it will pop open a new window and take you there. So one quick thing is this is a little more modern than my website actually is. This uses what's known as responsive layout. And in responsive layout, as I change things, you see that the web page dynamically adjusts with it each time I resize the browser. And then if I start going down really low, it readjusts itself. And you'll see the change up here, that moved from where it was from here to there. And then this part jumped down underneath. And then if we keep going down even further, it now goes into a sort of iPhone style layout, and everything becomes lined up top to bottom. And you can see that everything else still looks good. It stops at 240 pixels, so this is about as small as it'll get right here. And if you try to go beyond that, it will not be able to, because there's no phones in the market that go underneath 240. So that's what's known as a responsive design. What's the difference between that and what I have on my main website, which is called Adaptive Website? An adaptive website, as I resize things, you see it doesn't actually really change very much. It's only when I hit very specific sizes like 960. Oops. So let me see. It's hard to guesstimate what a 960 is, but right there, you saw it. So from here, you'll see the icon snap. And that's so whenever someone views it on an iPad, it looks one way. And then if I go all the way down to the iPhone size, you'll see it jump into the iPhone layout, which is 320 pixels right there. And you see how big the jump is. So an adaptive website basically looks at whether you're using a desktop browser, a iPad, or some other tablet-based device, or an iPhone, and it changes the layout based upon that device. Now, why is this now not as modern as it used to be? And the reason is because of the popularity of Android, and because of that, there are now a lot greater browser resolutions than what formerly was supported. So there's now the Galaxy S3 and a lot of other mobile browsers, and these adaptive websites do not easily fit that. Since they tend to snap into one size or another, they cannot accommodate a wide range of browsers. So that's why that's sort of considered now a better than nothing technique, because there's still plenty of websites on the web that give you nothing, but it's not best practice anymore. The downside is that writing a responsive layout takes a lot of time and involves a heavy amount of jQuery. And even then, this is still not quite web-based standards at this point. So if it's truly web-based standard, then it would be what was known as a stateless website. And you've seen these before, like Gawker, where instead of refreshing the page, so whenever you click a link, instead of jumping to a brand new page, it would maintain and refresh only this div element inside of here, rather than refreshing the entire page. And we use sockets.io or some other backbone or other structures to get the truth out of the DOM, as they say. But those are very advanced techniques, but those are current best practices. We're not worried about all that. We're worried about how do you even get out the door. What's your first step? So to show you that, this is FireWorks, and this is the first step. And that is to mock up a very simple website. So how do you get started? Well, the first thing to do is just to look around and go File, New from Templates, and go to Wireframes. And inside of here you can see all sorts of various wireframes that have been made, and you can even preview which one. And I really like this restaurant one, so I'm going to open that up. And right now it has the grid on, so in your guides. And this shows you how it's sort of lined up. Actually, I didn't want that one. File, new from template. Travel. I like this one better. So it looks really cool, and it's just a template, so this isn't a real website, but it's made to look fairly close to what a website would look at without having to go through and make all this stuff. Where all this stuff is almost entirely coming from is under the common library. If you go to, well, web and application is really what we want. It's wireframe. Over here, so stuff like the menus, you can't see that inside of the preview little window in here. But if we drag it out, you'll get a better look at it. So you can see this little menu here. Now, it's by default it's at the bottom of the stacking order, at least whichever. So when I go inside of layers, the master layer is locked, so it's going underneath that. But basically, all of these different icons are part of this common library, and it's just basically an easy way for you to drag and drop elements onto the page without having to sit around and mock them all up yourself. So the first thing to do is to grab one of these image icons, because for some reason this actually is not inside of FireWorks by default. Right click on it, go to convert to symbol. It's going to ask what do you want to call it, and call it image mockup, or a wireframe, I guess. Wireframe, and click save to common library and click OK. As soon as you do, it's going to ask where do you want to save this to. And in my case, I saved it inside of my own folder, which I call custom symbols. So you can create that yourself and then save it in there. And then once you do, in fact, I'll call this one no border, or a light border. I actually think it is a really light border. Now inside of your common library, when you go to custom icons, or excuse me, custom symbols, you'll see a brief preview of what it looks like, and you tell the difference between this thick one, which is one of these, and this light one, which is down here, or one of these other ones. So let's close out of these, and we'll go to File, New. It's going to ask us what size we want to make our new website, and you can go down here if you know that you're going to be using a grid-based system, if that's how you like to design things. In my case, it's a 960 by 728 grid, or you can use this. This is a common web size, 1024 by 768. And hit OK. As soon as you do, you now have a new web page, or excuse me, not a web page, a blank canvas on which you can begin adding elements. So the first element is that if you look here inside of your layers, you're going to notice this thing called web layer. This is for hotspots and slices, which whenever we get into exporting all this stuff out, that's what that's from. But by default, you have an empty folder layer called layer 1. So unlike Photoshop, which usually gives you a background layer, there is no background layer. There's just the canvas. So the first thing you do if you want to start mocking up is draw out your background. And in my case, I just drew out a very simple gradient. So to get to the gradient, you see down here where we have the properties of this rectangular tool. Right over here, the third one, you'll see is a gradient fill, and in this case that's way too dark, so we'll go from this color to this color, and that gives us a nice gray to white linear gradient. Now you can also change it if you want to try different versions. So if you wanted a ripple or a contour, you can try those out and see how they fit you, but in this case we just want a very simple linear gradient, because that's what I'm using on this website. And you can also set up custom stops, so that way you can have a a harder edge line like I do on this web page. Okay, so pretty simple, basic Photoshop type stuff. One of the things that will confuse you if you are used to Photoshop is that everything here is controlled by these little diamond symbols. So in this case, I'm actually changing where it begins and ends on this gradient. So the beginning and the ending points want it more wide or more dark. In order to actually scale out the rectangle itself, you have to hit Q, which will bring up this scale tool, and then you have to scale it like so if you're going to do that. But in my case, what I'm going to do is inside of there, I'm going to lock this and give this a more semantic name. Oops, I have to unlock it to rename it. A background. Essentially, that's what it's going to be. From there, I'm going to go to my custom symbols, and I'm going to open up my blank wireframe. Put that up here. Hit Q to scale it. I'm going to scale it out to about here, or at least until it covers up all the background. Now you will notice something kind of funky about it, and that is that the size of the symbol is less than the actual space. So that can be a problem sometimes. So have that. I'm going to actually be moving this one into a new layer. Let's go in here, create a new layer, and inside of this layer we'll call this BG elements. Inside of here we'll call this one header elements. And why does this matter? Well, whenever you start creating any squares or anything, whichever one of these is selected, you can see that by the meatball here. Whichever one of these is selected, that's where new elements are going to be created. So if I create something right here, you see that it goes into header elements. If, however, I were to have the BG element selected and do the same thing, you'll see that it goes inside of here. And automatically, just like in Photoshop, whatever's on top is what's going to be visible. So if something is placed in the wrong area, then it's going to appear underneath the other elements. So that's part one. Now I'm going to go down to wireframe, and I'm going to grab the menu horizontal level 1, hit Q to scale this thing out a little bit. And I'm not sure exactly what this one's made with. Inside of FireWorks, it works like Illustrator, where it has the ghosting mode whenever you go into isolation mode. So if you keep clicking on something, you'll eventually get to the isolated element. So in here, this is a grouped element, so there's a group inside of a group inside of a group, and then you get to the individual elements. And here it's using Arial 14 for the size. And let's say I want to make this whatever font that is on my system. And then I can do so, or Times New Roman, a more common choice. So that's how I can access menu elements if I want to get inside of there. Then you just click outside of it to exit. So now I have my menu elements. I'm just going to stretch this out so it goes all the way through. Now if you want to be more scientific about how you're lining things up, then you would select multiple elements, go hit your Align tab, and you can start aligning these things. So you can align them to the vertical center, so now it's vertically centered, and you can align this one to the horizontal center to snap everything over. So that way now you know you're good to go. And of course this background image needs to be resized, so that way the X marks fit inside of there. But again, we're just going for a general idea. And then you would essentially repeat this process for the little images that are over here. Now in order to get the Greek text, as it's called, go to Commands and go to Greek text, and you can insert black, gray, or hatched. So here we have hatched Greek text, and you can drag it out like this to resize it any which way you want, and you can also drag it out so it aligns it to the right or to the left by clicking on these little nodes here. You can also randomize your line heights. there, just to make it look a little better. So here's the Greek text version, and in my case, I just went for these sort of gray ones. If you want to do that, I have some nice Lorem Ipsum text. The other way to go about this, go to Commands and go to Greek text and insert black. I think black has the best contrast for this. And then on this one, you'll see all these different little things. These are the auto shapes, and that Greek text is here under auto shapes. To open and close this menu, double click on something, and it'll open it up or close it. So you can have things open or closed as you need. Now grab it and drag it down. And there you have a pretty simple website mockup. Now this one I did was designed to look a little more professional. And so why would you do this? Well, number one, because it gives you an easy place to start. You just drag and drop and rearrange elements without having to worry about colors and fonts and a lot of other stuff. And particularly when you're working with clients, this can be very hard to get them to understand. And this idea came from a guy known as Bill Buxton, who is a UI designer. This guy. And the big book is Sketching the User Experiences. And so this is the workbook for his actual Sketching User Experiences book. And what he said, and this is 2008 book, I believe 2007. He's the guy who changed the Windows interface to the modern UI, which is sort of these these block elements that refresh and update, so the Dow Jones and all that. That was Bill Buxton. And what he said working with clients is that when you show them something and it's too professional, like even this, he would have a problem with this very clean looking font, because he said the first thing that's going to happen is a client's going to say stuff like, what about this font? I don't like that font. Can you pick something else? What about this color? I like this color better. And they're going to have you tweaking things and twiddling with things, but they're not going to have you focusing on the big issue, which is the user experience. Is it easy to navigate? Is it easy to find things? Does it make semantic sense? Do people know where things are, where they are, and how to get out of there? And so that's the first thing you need to focus on with the client. Now, the second thing is getting paid. And it's a lot easier to get paid incrementally than it is to get paid all at once. So you would send them off 3 different mock-ups like this that you quickly threw together, or that you carefully designed and constructed, I should say. And you would ask them, so which of these 3 do you like best? And they would pick one, and then you would move forward from there. And you would bill them for that time, so the time it took you to make this mock-up. And if they pay you, then you know that you're going to have a good working relationship with this client. If they don't pay you, then it's a very early warning sign that these people are going to stiff you on future payments. So the advantage of working like this is it gives you an easy way to throw around ideas and to try out new things and not worry about some of the deeper details. Now the other reason this is important is because one of the things that FireWorks does is it creates interactive PDFs. And what does that mean? Well, it means that I can click on elements, and you see that I actually jump down. So this is the second page. I click again, I get taken to the third page. Click back up, I'm taken to the first page again, and so forth. And you're seeing little previews of what's going on. Now, of course, this one is a rough and dirty mock-up that you're looking at right here. And it's an old one, but it gives you the idea. The advantage of creating an interactive PDF like this is that PDF is an open source format, which means that it'll be around forever and ever. The second advantage of it is that if you create a website, you need to archive it. And if you archive the actual website, well, the problem is servers go down. Sometimes you hand off a design to a client, and the client will absolutely murder your design. Or they'll hire a different designer later on who has a totally different idea, or the business goes under, or 1,000 things can happen. So if you archive a website as a website, you don't have a permanent way of referencing it. However, if you archive it in an interactive PDF, you have a single file instead of like a website is, which is a distributed file across a bunch of different areas. So if you look at mine, this modern website, you can see here that I have 4 HTML pages, 3 JavaScripts, and 3 CSS, plus a bunch of images. So handing someone all this can be potentially problematic because you have to zip it up, they have to unzip it, and if things aren't, this is just a very simple design actually. well, I say that, but if you actually look through how much code there is, there's quite a lot. But this is a small mock-up sample website. If this was a full-featured website like on WordPress, then it has tens of thousands of files. And you need some way of showing what that looks like. And so this allows you to do that and create an interactive PDF they can click on. In fact, if you get fancy with it, you can create interactive PDFs where things will pop up and pop down. You can play videos inside of the browser, all sorts of cool things. So it allows you to have a single document that can be referenced and that can be archived. So that way, as you're building your portfolio, one of the most important things is to be able to show what you've done. So we'll get into that later. But that is your, basically your homework will be to create a mock-up either using FireWorks, Photoshop, I don't really care which program you use, but create some very, very simple mock-up of what you want your website to look like. And I told you I would show you another program. So this is Balsamic Mockups. And this one takes Bill Buxton's theory to the extreme, because you're seeing here, like, if I wanted to get a web page, I now have this, and you can see how cartoony they made it, but again, it's very intentionally done to get the viewer focused on the layout and what's going to be in there, and not focus so much on the exact icons and the exact elements. This just makes you strictly look at the usability features of it. So this is free for a classroom. So if you really like this, update that later. If you really like this, then I can ask Derek if he'd be willing to go ahead and sign one for this class, just so we have something to create these sort of quick and easy mockups, and then show you how to take these mockups and put them into actual HTML code. Balsamic doesn't generate code, but you can actually export from here and actually export CSS and all sorts of other stuff. So that's it for today.